This is episode 86 of the Wilderness Locals podcast. On this episode, our guest is John Barklow. If you don't know who that is, then you need to check out knowledgefromstorms.com. John is an absolute wealth of knowledge and, frankly, the best resource available for surviving difficult times in wild places. John's an all-around great dude. He's the big game product manager for Sitka and a badass hunter, and he's just awesome. Enjoy this podcast, guys. This episode is brought to you by Kifaru International, the toughest hunting gear on the planet. Right now, Kifaru's just launched 2 new packs and a fishing rig and all kinds of stuff, so head over there and check it out, kifaru.net. And as always, this podcast is brought to you by Just Shooting Arrows, BC's premier archery shop. So I had the pleasure of a few minutes ago waking my wife up and being like, hey, you want to hang out with this 3-year-old while I do a podcast? She's like, dude, I hate you. I'm like, okay.
You'll be dealing with that all weekend.
Oh, yeah. And then I leave next week for my goat hunt.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yes.
Yeah. I figure this is pretty good timing because I'm exactly a week out.
Yeah, right on. Well, we should definitely talk about that, huh?
Yeah, man, for sure.
I was just writing some stuff this morning. It's easier for me to kind of write in the morning, and I was just relating in my head a mountain goat story with epic outcome, not in the positive, but
no. Yeah, that'll be in the newsletter.
Potentially, who knows what ends up in the newsletter? I just read a bunch of shit, but yes, I hope to. Yeah,
Matt, the newsletter and everything you're doing is so cool, man. I've like as a consumer, I've been really enjoying it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'm not going to tell you I don't have a plan, but I allow my plan to be flexible. And I was just like, man, I got all this stuff, like years and years worth of stuff written down to be used for different things. Like, at one point I thought maybe a book, and at one point maybe a manual, and maybe at some point that'll come out. And I'm like, man, why not do a newsletter? Like, I've got so much every month that I'm thinking about, right? Things that are relevant to like the current season or month, or and I'm like, well, shit, man, there's probably other people that are also interested, and it's an opportunity to get a little more granular. I don't speak very specifically often on Instagram about this is exactly what I use and why. I just speak more in generalities. So I figured the newsletter was opportunity to like really dig more into the details and talk more about my fuck ups and things like that. So I think the next one, so the March one, every month they've gotten better in my mind. And I think the March one is like by far the best. So I'm looking forward to that, getting out there. Depending on when this is going to launch, definitely want to make sure that, get this link in the newsletter for March so that people are just aware. Cause that's the other thing. You do these podcasts, but if you don't talk about them, some people just, you either miss the story on IG or whatever in the 24-hour window, and then you just don't know about it. And so if somebody's not maybe a subscriber and then they hear about it, maybe they go and become a subscriber. Right. So just trying to help people that I like, as much as myself, just kind of get their word out.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that big time, man. And I'm more than anything, I just I appreciate what you're doing. Like part of what me and Wasey do is sort of, I don't know how I would put it, but like we try to make both of ourselves available to guys that are just starting out, and we field a lot of the same questions over and over again for guys in BC and Alberta. And I point a lot of dudes to your stuff, and I've DM'd that layering video to so many people that ask questions about layering systems, and I'm like, there's a guy that can answer exactly what you need.
He knows a lot about this. Yep.
That's right.
Well, I might have said this, or you might have heard me say this before, but I got a buddy who's a preacher. So we were in the Navy together for a long time, and I'm certainly not saying what I'm doing is preaching, I hope, but he told me, he said, I have to stand in front of the congregation and say the same thing 10 times for everyone in the congregation to hear it once. So he said, even though it sounds redundant to you and it might be somewhat boring because you've covered the topic, that doesn't mean everybody's heard it yet. And so I kind of keep that in my head, right? When I'm, referring somebody to the same video or answering the same question, it's like, yeah, you probably could do a little bit better to do some research before you ask, but I get it. Years and years of this, and everybody hasn't heard the message once. So that's why these platforms are so, with more and more people kind of heading out into the wilderness, mostly to hunt, right? From what you and I, the three of us do, but just some people just going backpacking or whatever. Like they don't know, they don't know all this stuff we know.
One of the questions we get a lot, and it's kind of hard to answer, is a lot of people ask about food and what do we take, and they can't just eat mountain houses, or they can't just, and I don't know how to answer that question a lot. So I don't know. If you have any thoughts on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on that. So I don't know if I got time in a podcast, but let me at least give you a little taste. So
how many days do you have available?
Yeah. If somebody says, John, hey John, what do I got to bring for a 5 day for food for 5 days on a goat hunt?
Yeah. So, but let me take a step back. So first of all, I'm not, nor do I ever want to be like a nutritionist, right? So I'm not going to tell you, I'm not the guy that's ever going to tell you to eat this percentage of carbs and this percentage of fat and this, because one, I don't know that stuff. I mean, I do, but I'm not going to tell you, right? Because I don't feel qualified. And two, I think it's pointless. So to me, it goes back to a mindset. So first of all, I call it crisis nutrition. And the reason I call it crisis nutrition is no matter what anybody thinks, when you get out in the wilderness, so say on your goat hunt, you are never going to be able to eat as good as you do at home. Yeah. So you're already going to you just have to plan on being in a deficit. Now everybody's tastes are going to be different. So, I'll eat the same thing every single day on a trip because it's easy. I know I can choke it down and I don't have a problem with dehydrated food. Other people, may have food allergies or their tastes are different. So the next thing I say is no matter what you bring, you better really like it because you're not going to want to eat it at a certain point in the trip. And the reason is because you're going to be tired, probably be a little dehydrated. If you're at altitude, you may be a little nauseous. Fatigue brings on, that feeling of nauseousness and not wanting to eat, and you have to be able to choke it down. So to me, crisis nutrition first is bring what you can eat, bring what you can choke down on your worst day. Then you can start going through and going, all right, what do I need? What can I get away with? And I think at that point, it's, if you've never gone say a 5 day trip, I think is what you mentioned, right? If you've never done a 5 day trip and packed for that and eaten 5 days worth of whatever, be it Oreos or dehydrated food, you got to go out there and try it. And if you don't have time to go try it, then you need to serve yourself at home 5 nights in a row the most delicious dehydrated food you've ever served, and make sure that you like it, and then go do a bunch of workouts and see how your body reacts. Because the problem is everybody's body's going to react a little different, right? So I know for myself that I don't need to eat a lot. but I do need to hydrate a lot. So I just know that over time, right? I know what I like and I know what I don't like. I know that altitude takes away taste and brings on nausea. So food to me is not, although most people eat food for some comfort, and there certainly is comfort in the backcountry, I also just bring it because I know I got to choke it down because it's the necessary evil. So, I don't really put a whole lot more into that. I'm not the guy who's going to take, what was the one? It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. Luckily, we weren't on a backpack trip. It was like quail with green curry. It was absolute shit. Like it tasted like ass, right? But if I had like thought in my house that I was going to be all, healthy and bring that, I'd have been like, God, this sucks. And most people won't eat it. So you have to eat the food you bring. You can measure out calories, but you're never going to be able to bring, everybody's like, oh, I burn 3, 4, 5x the calories on a backpack hunt that I do in a normal day. There's no way you can bring that many calories. Mm-hmm. So you have to bring food you can eat. You have to put some sanity to it, right? It can't just be all junk food. It can't just be all carbs. But you have to know how your body's going to react. I like to say going on a backpack trip is not the time to become healthy, right? It's also not the time to cycle off any of your respective vices. So caffeine, nicotine, any of that stuff. So, I've seen some really crazy reactions from people who are out in the field. We're out in the field for a long time. Guy runs out of dip and he goes the next 4 days without dip and he gets splitting migraine headaches and becomes the biggest asshole you ever wanted to meet. Right. Mm-hmm. Same can be done with not alcohol, caffeine. Right. And the other thing is people want to get healthy on a backpack trip and are like, I'm going to bring all these supplements, but I'm not going to take any of them until I'm actually up in the mountains on the first day of the backpack trip.
Shitting their brains out.
And then they take it and they're like, oh my God, MCT oil makes me shit my brains out. Right. And all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, so I just try to take the sexiness out of it and go, You're going to be out there. You're going to be hungry. You're not going to be able to feed yourself enough. And whatever you bring, you better damn well be sure that you can eat it. Then I go into, okay, yes, there should be a certain percentage of proteins, carbs, and fats, right? But I think until you get the first part right, there's no sense in having the conversation about the second part. So, I don't know if I'm fully answering your question, but this whole thing about, I'm going to go out in the backcountry and I'm going to be healthy and I'm going to cut down on my sodium and all this. Fuck that. Like, you better be able to go out there and eat a dog turd if that's what it takes and survive, or you're not going to get anywhere. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the way I've never met you, Wasey, but that's kind of the way I look at it because I know at a certain point in time you will hit a wall, and if you can't push through that and haven't done it, no matter how much high speed food you've brought and think you can choke down. And I've got lots and lots of stories, right? Like at a certain point, you won't be able to do it.
Yeah. And that's just one of the questions. And it's like people are looking for a certain answer. It's like they want me to tell them like, well, this is what you need to bring. And I'm like, well, that's tough. that's a tough one to answer.
Well, I was just, so this little article I'm writing, it's about this, this hydration and energy mix that I've been trying for the last year. And I've been getting, for me, I've been getting pretty good results. So yeah, if you want to try it, you can, but you have to test it, right? You have to try it. But listen, if Gatorade is your jam, then if that works for you, if you can maintain cognitive function and your body keeps reacting well and you don't get cramps, like go for it, But you're right. I think people are looking for a baseline, a place to start. Mm-hmm. And I think you can certainly give that to them, but because everybody needs a place to start, but it's a little more nuanced than that. And I think that the attitude to me and looking at it, like I say, I title it Crisis Nutrition. I got that from a guy many, many years ago. That's the way I've always talked about it when we were running military operations. And the way I approach it when I go out there is it's not going to be perfect. It's going to suck. What I bring, I absolutely, like, I walk out of the field rarely with anything extra, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I bring, like, I've got to choke down. You just have to. I mean, in the winter, I'll bring even a little bottle of like olive oil or almond oil. And sometimes, like, because I need the fat, I can just crave it. Like, I'll just take a shot of oil, like, just straight up, like, I'd never do that at home. But it's like, well, my body needs fat, and that's what's going to keep me warm. And so that's what I got to do.
Man, on a backpack hunt for me, like, food just entirely becomes like utility. Like, I take zero pleasure in it, and it has Wasey. Like, by day 2 of a backpack hunt, I'm like just over food, just zero interest. My kind of hot ticket lately has just been hot sauce. Bring hot sauce, put it on everything, be able to eat.
Yeah, but see, everybody's so different in their tastes and like what they like and the calories they need to consume. And, for as big as I am, I don't need very much. But a lot of times smaller guys, man, they can't bring enough. And I think it's really important for everybody to kind of know how their body's going to react in a deficit. And then they can start to figure out what works for them. Like, if you haven't gone on a 5-day trip, you should probably start on a 2-day trip and work up to a 5-day trip,
Yeah. Yeah. Cause even if you're looking online, I get a lot of people say to me that, I Googled it and there's just so many answers. And like, yeah, it's pretty muddy waters. Like, everybody has their own opinions, right?
Well, it is. And so, the other way I look at, or the other lens I look at crisis nutrition from is, when we go out there. So when you guys go on your trip next week, that is not a controlled sporting event. There is no set playing field. There is no referee. There are no timeouts. There is no bench with, somebody there with a squirt bottle of Gatorade to put it in your mouth and tell you to hydrate. No, like, none of that exists. And so a lot of the way people approach the backcountry is they approach it like they're, going to run a marathon, or they're going to do some kind of controlled sporting event where there's, time limits and half times and timeouts and, coaches and none of that shit exists. And so they're like, oh, I'm going to bring my protein powder and I'm going to do this. And they got everything all put out in bags and all that's fine. That's not the problem. The problem is when they get out there, a lot of that shit they can't use. They can't choke down. They don't have the water for this. They don't have the water for that. This tastes like shit because they never tried it. I went on a trip one time and I think my food bag was half the weight. I think it was a 5-day trip. My food bag was half the weight of the other guys, right? So they brought 2x the amount of food, and they had measured it out and said, "Oh, we need these calories." And I'm like, "Listen, I can just keep operating on this set amount of food and this amount of calories based on experience." And on day 2, when we started becoming pretty wore down already, they couldn't choke down even half their food, and so not only were they now not getting the calories that they felt they needed, but they were carrying excess weight, and they came out of the field with, half a food bag each, where I think I came out with like 1 energy gel, right? So maybe I cut it a bit too close, but they brought too much. And so it's, you just have to go out there and try it. And I'm all about like being healthy, but going out in the backcountry for 5 days and running yourself ragged is not the most healthy thing, period. So like, it's not like you're doing your body any favor by going and kicking the shit out of it for 5 days in the backcountry. You need to go out there and survive. Like, you need to go out there and make sure you can come back. And so that's the way I kind of look at food, is like kind of this guerrilla style approach to it. Like, again, I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not going to script everything out down to the calorie. I just know over time, like, what I can get away with. Like, people would be shocked to know what I don't eat out there. But again, that's experience. I've seen guys like eat more food out in the backcountry than I could eat in 3 days at home. right?
Mhm.
But that works for them. Most of the time, though, they don't have enough water, so then their stomach gets all cramped, and then they can't take a shit for 3 days, and then that causes a bunch of other issues that they haven't kind of thought through, right? Because you're never going to be able to hydrate well enough. So it's just it's a balancing act, and it takes a lot of experience, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Or they drink Gopher water.
Yeah, or they drink Gopher water like Wacy and get Giardia on day 5.
Boy, I never want that again.
You know, when I was a kid growing up, and my dad, I went sheep hunting with my dad and stuff, and we didn't have gear, right? We drank out of the streams, and my dad would be like, well, you know, you got to watch for this or beaver fever, and everybody always talked about beaver fever, but it was never like it was nobody ever talked about it to being serious. That shit is fucking serious. like it knocks the shit out of you pretty bad.
Did you get it while you were in the field?
Yeah, I think so. He got it on our goat hunt last year.
see, I was just filtering. What happened is we were at like 8,000 or 9,000 feet, Ty, and we knew
that, but yeah,
or whatever we were at, but the most water was lower, and I didn't want to drop because I wanted to go after these goats, and we were out of water and we were hurting pretty bad. So I said to Ty, I'm like, Ty had found some 500 feet down, Ty, probably.
Yeah.
So he's like, there's a stream here, and it was a dank little stream. And I was pumping with a catadine, which whatever filters to 0.2 microns. So I thought, it should be good. That'll be fine. You know, I've drank some pretty sketchy water with that filter system. But but the only difference between me and Ty is he steri-penned and I didn't. And then it got me pretty bad.
So Ty, did you only steri-pen, and Waste, did you only filter, or what?
I run one of those stupid tiny little MSR trail shots, just super light filter. It takes me a while to get water. But it's light, and I force myself to do it every time, and then I steri-pen.
So he filtered and steri-pen,
and then you steri-pen.
Yeah,
and I just filtered. So
okay,
I figure in terms of a weight penalty, I can kind of get away with a little lighter filter and still have the steri-pen and be extra safe, because I have super weak guts, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, because for the most part, you know, most of the time the filter for, you know, water in North America is going to be adequate.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, no, I got it. I mean, I got it 12 days after I got out of the field, and I never want to have it again. Like, I'd really have to hate you to wish it upon you. Like it is a horrible, demoralizing experience, and I can't imagine having it while I'm still in the field.
Yeah.
I think the other way guys get it too, though, is poor equipment maintenance, right? Where they're letting the outflow cross into the inflow, right? And having some contamination that way, right?
So there's definitely, I think, a bunch of ways that you can, you know, think you're doing it right and still maybe do it wrong. So yeah, the way you described, so there's lots of ways, right? And one of them is what you described, so cross-contamination. 2 is what are you doing with your spoon, right? Because that's going in your mouth. What are you doing with the nozzle of your bladder or the cup or the bottle, right? Are you wiping your ass and not cleaning your hands and then sticking your hands in your mouth? There's so many other ways. So it's just general hygiene. I'm not saying you're a pig or anything. But,
no, he is. You're right.
But I'm just telling you, but there's so many other ways that everybody's like, oh, well, I filtered the water, so I'm totally fine. It's no, that's just maybe the most obvious, but there's a lot of other ways that we can get ourselves sick out there. You know, you think about just how you live your life at home, you know, and you're always, you know, whatever, washing your hands or using the little alcohol wipe or whatever. And I'm all about going full indige out in the mountains, but you know, there you have to there's a couple things that you just have to be a little cautious of. So, you know, maybe it was from the filter. Certainly could have been. You can get, depending on the filter. I don't think that's a ceramic filter, but there could be cracks in the filter or different things like that, or cross contamination, or who knows. It doesn't take much though. That's the thing. It's like for decades I didn't get it, and then I went on one trip and I just knew. I'm like, oh man, I screwed up. Like this is not going to be good.
And I carry chlorine tabs too, just in case the water's a little bit iffy, right? And I should have used them, but we were in a hurry.
Well,
we were on good goats.
There's so many things people don't want to, it gets really complicated, and I'm certainly not like the expert, but as an example, SteriPen, like if the water's got a lot of sediment in it, the SteriPen isn't going to be as effective. Mm-hmm. If the water's super cold, then your Aquamira tabs or your chlorine dioxide tabs are, going to take a full 4 hours, right? And not like an hour. So there's so many things, that we just, you kind of have to like, well, I'm going to try it and see what happens. And, I'm out here in the wilderness. It's not like I'm not taking a few risks. Mm-hmm. But, so you do the best you can.
Yeah. My water system honestly is built out of hunting, elk country, where it's like I very rarely find good water. So it's like the water always has a ton of sediment in it, and then it's always sketchy because it's so low, right? And like I pump that water into a Nalgene, and then I SteriPen it, and then it's like you're still kind of like, this tastes like crap, but I won't die.
Yeah, no, it's a great system, right? Because you're just like doubling up on your protection there. Yeah, no, that's, I mean, if you can get away with the weight, right? Which why can't you?
Yeah.
It's a great system. Like, would you rather do that or get sick halfway through your trip,
Yeah. Or just only drink elk piss full time. Like, I'm not into that.
Or that.
So, I do want to touch in on one thing though, that the first time we did a podcast together, Barklow, I mentioned my buddy that was talking about Mothwing Sitka. That's actually Wasey.
Oh yeah.
Oh, right on, dude. Yeah, I still have some of mine.
Yeah, I still have a coat, and I think that's the only thing I got left. But I can't remember what year I bought it. It was 2006 or 7, somewhere in there. I don't remember what year it was, but I remember I wore that stuff for probably a solid 10 years, and it was just it was starting to fall apart, but it held up really good. But some of the seams were starting to pop and stuff. So I emailed Sitka, and I always tell this story because the customer service is awesome. So I emailed Sitka. The guy emailed me back in like a couple hours. He wanted pictures of all the pieces. I sent him all the pictures. And he's like, go on our webpage and pick out a whole new kit to replace everything you have. And I'm like, okay. So that's what I did. And they emailed to me and paid the duty on it. And I'm like, fucking, you guys have got a customer for life. I'm telling you that right now.
But unfortunately, it wasn't Mothwing anymore.
No, it wasn't. It was Subalpine now. But so So I'm like, do you want the old stuff back? He's like, no, just keep it. But it was all kind of blown out, but I still got the coat.
Well, it's funny because some people have sent some Mothwing stuff back over the years that, I just see sitting around customer service. And, I don't know why they would send it back, but for whatever reason. And I grabbed that stuff, and I've got a couple totes in the office where all the Mothwing stuff goes just to have it. It's like, dude sends back an old pack that's blown out. I'm like, dude, like that's like needs to go in the archives,
Oh, it was honestly awesome gear. I know a guy's still running it to this day.
Yeah. So I really like that pattern.
What was the original pattern? Was it ASAT kind of for Sitka?
I think the original pattern was Mothwing.
Was it? Okay.
ASAT, I think, was only around for a year, maybe 2. It was before I got there.
Yeah. So Sitka had the ASAT, use the ASAT pattern, I think, didn't they, though, for a couple years, and then went to Mothwing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. You license it from people. That was back in the day when people didn't make their own camo pattern. And now like, any small startup hunting brand has their own camo pattern. Like it's almost like, obviously they don't want to pay the licensing fees, but too, it's like, well, geez, like anybody can do it. And so, it's going to differentiate my product over somebody else's. So it's crazy how many patterns are out there right now.
Yeah, it's wild.
And I remember that when I first started wearing Mothwing, and a few of the guys I hunted with, like nobody had really heard of Sitka. Like it wasn't.
Yeah.
At that time, I don't think there was much for even advertising, and everybody's like, man, you need to sell that and get some good camo, because and they're all wearing like fucking shitty Browning camo or whatever the hell they were wearing. But I look back at that.
Oh yeah.
I look back at that and laugh, but yeah, it was good shit.
Oh, that's awesome. So I'm a week out here. What am I forgetting? I mean, like I've been going through your videos and going through my system, and my packing list for these trips is always pretty well a constant. But I have a new bold title that's underlined with a couple empty bullet points beside it after, crampon snowshoes, trekking poles, and a couple other things under the shit for a winter goat hunt. What am I forgetting, Barklow?
You guys have done this before, right?
Winter, February? No, I've never done a February one.
Oh, you haven't? Okay. I don't know. Are you guys bringing any kind of like collapsible snow shovel?
Well, that's on the list, and I was going to ask you what shovel you like, and I basically just the one that packs down the smallest, I'd figure, right?
Yeah. Something that, a lot of snow machiners, backcountry skiers, like they're all going to carry something like that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you're in the same crowd, Black Diamond, Backcountry Access, Ortavox, somebody like that. And they're just, the blade comes, the handle and the blade separate, and then the handle collapses down. But I mean, to me, you can't go out in the winter, even for a day with snow on the ground without a shovel. I mean, for lots of reasons, like, worst case scenario, right, is digging somebody out who got caught in an avalanche, but, digging a snow wall to put your tent up, right, and flatten out a platform, or you can hear running water, but you got to dig 2 feet down through the snow to get to it, right, as opposed to melting snow, or, so many things. I mean, hell, I had a mountain goat fall, start an avalanche, get buried in a pile of avalanche debris, which was completely frozen, and I had to dig the son of a bitch out. So, that to me is like, and personally, like, I think every person should have a shovel, because, the blades aren't that big and it doesn't weigh that much. But, unfortunately, like these kind of hunts, late season hunts, you're going to be a little heavier because you have to carry some extra stuff. You have to carry, either extra clothing or all the stuff you just mentioned. So that, that's the one thing. I'm guessing you guys got snowshoes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So, snowshoes and poles go together, and then you've got, the shovel. So it does start to add up after a while. Depending on the stove you're using, you're going to need more fuel. So,
talking about stoves a little bit, in the winter, what's your go-to stove?
Most up until very recently, I'd run like a white gas stove. So maybe MSR XGK or a Whisper Light. There's a couple good brands out there that make white gas stoves, just because they're not affected. I mean, they're all affected by altitude and temperature, but the white gas stove is very easily adapted to that. If I bring a canister stove, which honestly, if I'm going out by myself, so I just have to melt water or snow for myself, maybe one other guy, I'm going to bring the MSR reactor stove. I think that's the best canister stove on the market, personally. You still need to know how to run it in the cold and kind of understand some of the limitations and how to counteract those. But, it works really well. And, you could get into all the particulars, but no other stove that I'm aware of, canister stove on the market, is capable of really doing what a reactor stove can do, in the cold. So it's super convenient. It doesn't take any pre-lighting like a white gas stove.
Mm-hmm.
There's pros and cons to each. I would say if you've got, I don't know what you've got, so I hope I'm not like shitting all over your parade.
No.
If you've got a reactor, I wouldn't hesitate to use it. If you've got, any kind of solid white gas stove, I certainly wouldn't hesitate to use that either. There's, I have some videos on YouTube that go a little bit more into each of those stoves, but, I don't want to mention any particular brands, but there's some really popular canister stoves out there that, I've certainly used, and I've certainly seen other people use, with like average to poor results.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're, just like we were talking about crisis nutrition, if you're relying on, either melting snow to create water for drinking and, eating your meals, or, most people don't do this anymore, but, boiling water to purify it so that you can safely drink it. And you have a stove that's not super efficient and like boils water fast and like melts snow fast and like consistently just keeps running, like you're kind of screwed. Like it's going to push you out of the mountains because you're just going to get to the point where you can't eat, you're not hydrated, and you're just going to start to not function very well.
Yeah. I got a little story. I didn't know, this is back in the day, and I didn't know much about them kind of stoves, and I had been running a jet boil. I actually still run a jet boil, but it was, it had gotten cold to -30 was the temperature. And I could hardly get any heat out of them canisters. Like I could hardly get any high flow out of it. Like I just couldn't get enough heat to even hardly boil water. Like it just took forever. So that was a big eye opener for me on how that type of canister gas reacts in like extreme cold, right? I didn't know. I've never done it before, right? But
yeah, that's what I call the Achilles heel of those stoves is you have a pressurized metal canister.
Yep.
And so so you got a couple things going on. It's a gas, and then as that gas gets cold, the pressure goes down, right? And you can even get to the point where it'll get cold enough where some of that gas will actually start to come out of the gas state, and you can hear it like moving around in there. So it's not going to work. So the way to get that stove, that fuel canister functioning is it's got to be warm. And when it's warm, the pressure is high, and then it's going to come out and it's going to work, right? So the whole crux of those types of stoves is keeping the canister warm. So, I'll pack it, if it's in my backpack, I'll pack it, and those canisters will be wrapped up in my sleeping bag, right? Or those canisters will be wrapped up in my puffy jacket. Or when I get into camp and I know I'm going to use it, maybe I pull that canister out of the pack and I put it in the pocket of my puffy jacket, and it starts to warm up from body heat before I use it. And then when I go to use it, I won't just set it on the snow because the snow is cold, and that cold ground is going to suck the heat out of that canister. So I want to insulate the canister. So I'll put it on a foam pad. I'll put it on a piece of wood. A lot of times I'll just sit it on my thigh and put my gloved hands wrapped around the canister. But as the pressure begins to, so as you burn fuel, the pressure goes down in that canister. And so as the pressure goes down, the efficiency of the stove goes down, right? Because the pressure's decreasing. And then also as the pressure decreases, it cools off. So you're losing pressure and you're losing temperature as you run the stove, both of which we just talked about are negative to the efficiency of that stove. So there's a lot of things that you have to do. I think it's harder to plan out my fuel consumption for a canister stove, especially when, you have those cold temperatures, or if you're going up in altitude, there's less pressure. Again, that's negatively affecting that canister. So you have to understand all those things. So you're like, oh, canister's cold, got to warm it up. Oh, going to go to bed tonight, can't leave the canister out -30, got to put it in the sleeping bag with me, or whatever it is, right? To try to counteract those forces to get the most efficiency you can.
Yep. You betcha. Yeah, that was a problem. And I found it out the hard way.
I found it out the hard way. I'm kind of stubborn, so I found it out a couple times. Right? I'm like, nah, there's no way that'll happen again. And it happened again,
Yeah.
So yeah, when you're the last guy sitting out trying to melt snow into water so that you can eat or have a hot drink, and everybody else is like fat, dumb, and happy and in their tent, like you start to figure it out pretty quick.
Yeah, I've had the same thing mule deer hunting at the end of November there, where just the stove just doesn't work with that particular system. Exactly what you're talking about, or works very poorly anyways. Yeah, well, so I'm kind of being a little selfish here and kind of working through my gear list with you, John. So one thing that's on my list here is like ice axes / climbing axes, or do I just go with like a like a black diamond whippet? There's that new stick from that dude Matt in New Zealand called the company's called Mountain Gear. He makes a stick called a mountain stick that looks pretty cool.
I might have seen that. I'm writing it down. I might have seen that on somebody's IG post.
It was probably me.
Need to check. Maybe it was, dude. I need to check that out. I'd never seen that before.
You know what? I'll send it to you. I'm gonna actually make a note here. I'll send it to you, and then I'll send this guy a note too.
So I went.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So that guy, what was his name again? Ty?
Matt
from New Zealand.
Super nice dude.
So I went on and I found his YouTube videos, and they don't have hardly any views. And he's a super smart guy, but he goes through and he's showing how he's kind of developing some of his products that he makes and making forms and stuff, because he does a lot of carbon fiber work, right?
Okay.
So yeah, he's super interesting, super smart guy. Check him out.
Well, so to answer your question, Ty, like I don't exactly know what you guys are doing. My guess is based on, my experience, for the most part, you're going to have snowshoes, right? So you're going to need trekking poles.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get a trekking pole like a whippet or like this guy's mountain stick, that almost for sure is going to be what you need. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like to go to a full on ice axe, you would have to be planning on, one, have the skills, and two, like planning on like doing some serious climbing, because you can do some really secure movement on mountains with crampons, with snowshoes, with those trekking poles, because of that ice axe,
Mm-hmm.
component. That's normally what I use. Like, yeah, on occasion where I targeted billies, I knew where they were. I knew that the reason nobody was going after them is because you had to like climb or descend, like something technical.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would go in there specifically with that kind of objective in mind. But for the most part, like those whippets have saved my ass so many times. And just like, just a little slip where I'm just like, you fall and like, it just catches and you're like, oh dude, like that was so awesome. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or like climbing up or climbing down something, especially if you're going to shoot a goat, probably going to slide downhill. Right. Or go
Mm-hmm.
downhill. And so you have to go down after them. So, you don't necessarily need to have one in each hand. I mean, you need a pole in each hand, but you don't necessarily have to have like 2 whippets or 2 mountain sticks. Yeah, they're ideal. But I won't go. I mean, I almost don't go anywhere anymore if I'm bringing a pole without at least 1 whippet. When I'm going out in the winter, like guaranteed there's at least 1, probably 2. And like this guy's from the picture you showed, that thing folds up, right? So you don't have to have the pick engaged.
I don't know if the pick actually folds, but it does collapse and everything. In the newest version of it, I know the pick is significantly smaller than the old version. Now it's a machined head. The original version was like a laser cut and welded head.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Petzl used to make one that was really cool. It was essentially like it was an ice axe. It was really an ice axe with a telescoping pole extension on the bottom. And they stopped making that, unfortunately, years ago. I can't even remember the name of it, but Petzl out of France used to make that. That used to be a really good one. The whippet's been really consistent. There's been some different variations of that over the years. The one I saw on your post really intrigued me, so I hadn't seen that one before. But yeah, I think that the type of hunt you guys are going on, like it is just perfect for that type of kit, right? Like that's what it's designed for.
Yeah, I'm going to, I don't have one right now, but I think I'm going to try to scoop one up in the next week here. It seems like they don't make them anymore, do they?
What's that?
A whippet.
Oh yeah, no, they make them.
Oh, do they? I will find one then. It will be mine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the distribution in Canada is. I mean, I got to believe it's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
It's, they make skiing and climbing gear. You guys do a lot of skiing and climbing up there. So
yeah, cool.
Somebody's got to have one.
I will find. Perfect. What else? What else am I thinking? One thing that I think is probably going to be important just to have on board, and I don't know if we ever deploy it, is just a good dry rope, right?
Yeah. Well, the only reason I hesitate is, again, I don't, if we had, if we had some history together out in the mountains, I'd be like, oh yeah, no, we should definitely bring a rope. It's kind of listen, I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's also a good idea to have a little bit of idea how to use one. And the only reason I say that, and again, I'm not trying to be demeaning to you guys, I just don't know you, but I'll just talk generality, is sometimes when people bring a rope and they don't know how to use it, they will get themselves into situations that they should have never been in because they had the rope as some kind of crutch, right?
Yeah.
That aside, so many times, dude, like not a full-on climbing rope, but like a 7 mil, what we would call a tag line, a 7 mil tag line, or 7 mil accessory cord, where, somebody's, you guys are climbing up or climbing down. It always looks easier than it is sometimes, right? And you're like, hey, dude, like this would be super easy if I didn't have this pack on. Okay, well, the guy climbs up without his pack, drops the rope, pulls 2 packs up, other guy climbs up without his pack, right? Or vice versa, lower the pack. Or sometimes you have to like lower the goat. So there are so many situations where a rope or a piece of rope, even like 50 feet. So what would 50 feet be? 15 meters?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
15 meters of like 7, maybe 8 mil rope. 7's probably more than enough, but like that would be like clutch, most people don't do hunts where it's actually needed, but when you start going into terrain in the winter, you got crampons, you got whippet poles, you're doing what you guys are doing, like that piece of rope can really be the difference between, sometimes recovering your goat, not recovering your goat, being able to take a shortcut as opposed to having to go, a kilometer around to get access to a ridge. It can really have a lot of benefit. So again, it's just this risk versus reward because everything's going to weigh something and take up space. And I forget how you said you guys were getting in. You were taking, I don't know if you were hiking or taking sleds a certain distance and then going in from there. I don't know what you said. I don't know what you want to say because I don't know if you want to give away where you're headed. But
it's not that huge. It's a pretty hard tag to draw that I drew. It's actually the same unit that we hunted in the summer.
Okay.
Yeah, no, there was about 40K to sled. Now there's about 32. And then, we were able to drive pretty far back there because there was some active logging in the area and there's a road that was good. So now there's about, 8 to 10K to sled. Then we're going to bail off and get through tree line from there.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So, so you can bring some things, and I don't know how far it would be from and you guys probably don't know yet either, where you would maybe set base camp to your sled, but maybe you could even leave some extra stuff on your sled if you had to. But to me, the things I bring in the winter, like you had mentioned, and I'll ski most of the time if I can, as opposed to snowshoe. But but nonetheless, it's however that mode of transportation works. But it's 2 poles, at least one's a whippet, crampons, a snow shovel, and a chunk of rope, like we had talked. Sometimes, depending on what I'm doing, I'll bring a super lightweight, very, very minimalist harness and one locking carabiner, right? Just to give me some options, right? So, again, I don't know fully what you guys are into, but if you had to not just rappel off something, but if you had to lower something, sometimes it's nice to run the rope through a carabiner on your harness and lower a 300-pound goat right down an ice cliff or something like that.
Yeah, a little more stability, eh?
A little more stability, yeah. And you can just wear the thing the whole time. Don't even have to throw it in your pack. But those are some of the things that I like, and I kind of consider those safety items to help kind of mitigate the little bit of risk that you can have when you're going in. I don't want to say too much and scare your wife and her not let.
No, it's all good.
But yeah, I think you're thinking the right way.
Yeah, I mean, for me right now, looking at kind of what's been going on here in BC, it's been really warm and it's pretty crappy conditions here, especially in terms of avalanche risk. It's supposed to cool off here in the next week, but I don't know if it's neither here nor there. So we're going to be definitely picking routes that are 100% safe. And there will be, you see a lot of guys doing February goat hunts and that are kind of pushing the envelope, taking some risk, crossing some places that in the first place, you're kind of I don't know if I would do that in the best conditions. But the way stuff's been here in BC, there's going to be a lot of routes that I have laid out now. Because I know the terrain, having been there in the summer, that's right? Huge. Yeah. There's routes now that one of the guys in our group that is local up there, he's going, these 3 are hard nose. They're impossible. You won't do it without dying, right? So that's going to be real important. And going into this too, I've sort of laid out in our group chat there, hey, there's going to be some hard and fast rules. If anybody in our group isn't cool with what we're doing, we stop and go a different route or we back down or whatever. Right. So I think for me, if we kill a goat, great. If we don't, let's have a good time and be safe. That's sort of where I'm at with it anyways. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's the right approach. Sometimes when conditions are the way they're going to be, and anytime you go into the mountains, you just have to sometimes wait, either wait for the animal to get in the right position, right? Or for the conditions to be right for you to maneuver around. Because, mountain goats, post rut, they're going to go back up. So if it's anything like Alaska, it's definitely going to be post rut. So those billies will be up top, but oftentimes that that can be to your advantage because you can maneuver, up a ridge outside their view and kind of come in above them. The problem often that I've encountered is, after the shot, where does the animal go?
Yeah.
And, trying to, the hardest thing to do is not take a shot, because if you do, where the animal is, either you can't get to him, or if the animal's on the edge and he decides to tumble or take a couple steps, as they often want to do, then where's he going to go and can you recover him? So, that process is a little bit different than really any other type of hunting I've done, where you're thinking, where's the animal going to end up, and am I going to lose him if he, happens to go there? And so that's where sometimes, the rope is an advantage, or sometimes you're like, what we have to do is we can't go directly to the animal. We have to go back the way we came, so we know that's safe, get to the bottom. And now that we're not worried about, because he's dead, hopefully, him seeing us, then we can come around and work up a drainage and get to him that way, which is probably safer than coming down on him through something that maybe we can't see from above, right? So it's just this constant assessment of risk, which, I love it. Like my favorite thing to do in the world is mountain goat hunt. I think they're underappreciated, and I think it really, to me, it is like graduate level hunting, mountain hunting, because it takes every bit of skill that you have brought to the table to kind of just not necessarily to be successful as much as just go out there and thrive and survive, and not survive in the sense of dying, but just have a good time and be able to maneuver around that terrain.
Man, we just have had the best time with this tag that I drew. It's it's a hard tag to draw. It's in a unit that has a high population, a sub unit, like this zone that we're in has a high population of goats. And it's when we were there in August, we saw 100 goats, right? And it was exactly what you're talking about. We look at this goat for an hour and be like, yeah, if we shoot it, what do we do? And it's I think the level of accomplishment maybe, or the level of feeling, how satisfied you feel mountain goat hunting when you're up there and you're just on top of all these goats and you're making the call, I think it's hard to beat mountain goat hunting when it comes to the complexities of it. And I've never experienced that doing anything else. It's super cool.
Yeah, no, me as well, for sure.
Yeah.
Right on. Wasey, what do you got for Barklow here? You got anything else for him? I feel like you hit everything I needed to touch on. I did text you the other day there, Barklow, and you got back to me on it. My question was, I was asking about running up that mountain, what you would do, because I do have that that blizzard system that you sent me, which is actually just insanely nice and useful. I used it at the end of season here in December quite a bit, and it was just killer. But I'm kind of thinking about removing some of my normal insulation layers and running that instead. But it is a pretty heavy system, right?
Yeah, again, it's depending on what you guys are doing and how you're doing it. So for sure, for me, if I was riding a sled, that's what I'm wearing on the sled. If it's cold out, because to me that's a no-brainer. It's going to block the wind, going to keep me warm, no-brainer. Do I leave it at the sled and go into base camp without it? I think it depends how far base camp is. If you're going in on snowshoes and dragging a kid sled behind you with your gear, which, oftentimes is the way to get that extra gear into a winter environment, is just to pull a sled behind you. Like you say you would in Alaska, right? On a big climb or something like that. That's a good way to do it. So it's I'll put 30 pounds on my back and I'll pull another, 40 in the sled, or, we have 100 pounds to divide up between 3 guys. And so, instead of going in with 60 pounds on our back, let's just put a bunch of weight divided up amongst some sleds. You can bring extra fuel, but my point is you could bring that blizzard, right? It's only going to be for, like I shouldn't say that. Like there are times when it can be cold enough that you can move around in that a little bit, but for the most part, that's not really the intent. But dude, you get up on those ridges and I was this story I was writing, like I totally jacked it up. But you're up there, you're waiting. Of course, the animal never does what you want when you want. If you were able to, carry that up just for a day hike, right? And then when you got up there, put that on, dude, you could camp out on those things all day and probably not get cold wearing that blizzard system. So, I think you could do it. If I brought that, would I bring a puffy jacket? No, I would definitely just bring the blizzard jacket. Like that would all of a sudden be my puffy jacket. And although, it's going to be a little heavier. Really, the weight's not the issue. It's a little bulkier. But what you're getting is a badass puffy jacket, but it's Gore-Tex, so it's rain gear. So now I'm not bringing a rain jacket. So you're just you're taking a little versatility out of the system, but you've got a bomber piece that, like, dude, if everything went south, you could like lay down in the snow like Han Solo instead of going into the guts of the Tauntaun. Like you could just lay down in the snow in that blizzard system and like go to sleep. The thing's so warm. So
I'm gonna make somebody take a photo of me in that thing it laying down in the snow on the top of the mountain taking a nap.
You need to. I mean, seriously, man, that system, when we built that system, kind of the trip you're going on was definitely one of the trips we had in our mind that's what it was intended for, right? So it was intended for winter hunts, late season hunts, very cold hunts. I didn't know at the time as many people were doing, and maybe they weren't, I don't know, but
I think
winter
it's exploded
type
this year.
Yeah, mountain goat hunts. But I've sent guys to the Arctic on polar bear hunts, right, in Canada, where they're getting pulled around on dog sleds or in the back of a sled towed by a machine. I've sent guys on muskox hunts where it's extremely cold, and that's what they wear. My buddy went on a muskox hunt. He's an Alaska resident, a good buddy of mine, and they did 150 miles one way on sleds. He shot his muskox on day 2 with a bow. They did 150 miles back, and he had that full blizzard suit to include the mittens and the hat. And the guy's like, dude, he goes, I honestly can tell you, and I forget what boots he had, but obviously we don't make boots, but he said, Doug, I can honestly tell you, he goes, I never got cold.
That's awesome.
So, that's really what that suit is intended for, because any other time of year, it's just too damn warm. It just is. So, yeah, but you're just going to have to like look at your gear and like weigh it out. But I probably wouldn't bring a puffy jacket. Like those are clearly going to be my puffy pants. I would probably sleep in that damn thing. Right. Cause why not? So yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm into it. I think like, quite honestly, I think my layering system, I'm probably going to strip down a bit. And I have one more question at the end of my layering stuff that I do actually need to ask, because this is a selfish podcast where I just ask shit that I want to know and hopefully other people care. But I think my layering system, I'm probably going to strip down. I'm going to do that core light, like you always suggest for moisture management. We talked about that on the last podcast. Then I'll probably do a little heavier, like synthetic on top of that. And then I don't know if I'm going to run a pant anymore. Like I'm not gonna be out there pantless, but I think I'm just gonna run a rain pant for when I hike in.
Why is that?
Well, I just thought like base layer and then a rain pant over it that I could vent off would be a good call for heading up the mountain, right?
But why do you think you need a rain pant to hike in? Like because there's snow on the ground?
Well, it's like we're gonna be kind of breaking trail in 6 feet of snow, right? We're gonna be wet, I think.
Yeah.
Does that add up?
It's probably not what I would do. like if the weather's good, even if I'm breaking snow, like if I'm in a soft shell pant, that thing's going to breathe really well.
Okay.
And if it gets wet, I know I'm going to be able to dry it out. But it's going to be comfortable, right? So it's going to stretch. It's going to have all the features I want. Hiking in rain gear kind of sucks.
Yeah, it does. You're right.
To be honest, like it just doesn't, as good as the rain gear can be, like it doesn't have all this stretch and articulation. And I understand the wet part. And again, I've never, been to the exact area where you're headed. But as a general rule, like I try to go out, hike, ski, whatever, in a pair of soft shell pants and only put on the rain pants. Like obviously if it's raining or like wet snow or, I need to block the wind. And, rain gear is one, it's more expensive than say a pair of soft shell pants. And so, there's a good chance if you only wear those, like they're going to be toast by the end of that trip. So you're going to have to probably buy a new pair. Whereas if you could get away with wearing, say, the soft shell pant 75% of the time and only had to wear the rain pant 25% of the time, you're probably not going to wear the pant out. So I could be wrong on that. And then if you're walking around in crampons, which it sounds like you're bringing crampons. Oh yeah. Like I'm assuming you've worn crampons before. Like there's a good chance you're going to shred the bottom of those rain pants by the end of the trip. So you just throw $350 or whatever it is Canadian, like out the window. Like those pants are shredded.
$1,700 Canadian right now.
Yeah, it probably is. So I don't know. Just kind of fact. Would you be better served with a pair of soft shell pants and knee high Gators? And maybe that's a question.
Good point. What pant would you run?
I would personally run a Timberline pant.
Nice.
And the reason I would run a Timberline pant, so if not that, a mountain pant. But the reason I think a Timberline pant's a really good choice, if you have that choice, if you have that option, is it's got waterproof seat and waterproof knees. And they're reinforced, right? So I can sit in the snow. If I don't have a ground pad, I just like plop down in the snow. My ass is going to be wet. You're constantly going to be on your knees, getting out of tents, grabbing snow, digging tent platforms, whatever it is. Your knees aren't going to be wet. So everything else is going to dry, right? It's a pant that blocks wind pretty well, so you don't have to immediately default to a rain pant if it got windy. So it's like that pant was designed exactly for the hunt you're going on, like exactly. That was a
damn it, John. Pant. That's like the only Sitka pant I don't own.
Well, why didn't you ask me weeks ago as opposed to 7 days before? Listen, I'm just saying it's the perfect pant. There's a lot of other pants. Like I wouldn't have hesitation running like a mountain pant or any of the pants. I mean, fuck, you could even run an ascent pant, but it's a lightweight pant, right? So you're going to have to probably want to run a heavier weight base layer underneath it. Yeah, but I would honestly, I default to a soft shell pant as often as I can and leave my rain gear in the bottom of the pack until absolutely needed. Just because it's not going to breathe as well. Like I said, it's not going to stretch as well. So it's going to wear you down sooner while you hike because you're going to be fighting the fabric. Even the best rain pant in the world isn't going to be as good to hike in as a soft shell pant. Yeah. So that's something to keep in mind.
That makes a lot of sense. And then up top, I was probably just going to run a, what's that? The active insulate. Is it a Kelvin Active?
Kelvin Active. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just going to run a Kelvin Active. And then I was going to bring the old Blizzard suit as sort of my all puffy situation instead of my normal stuff.
To me, that sounds about perfect. Yep. If I had to bring one other thing, I would personally probably bring a mountain jacket or some type of like super lightweight wind shell. That'd be the only other thing I might consider because, you're not going to climb the mountain in the blizzard. We already talked about that. So if you're climbing the mountain and it's nuking wind on that ridge, you're going to want something to maybe block a little bit of wind. And so mountain jacket or like a little like Black Diamond, again, they make this, I forget what it's called, but it's like 5.5 ounce wind shirt. It's like super lightweight.
Oh, that's wicked. I think I have a mountain jacket.
Like that.
A mountain jacket is just like, I think
no
a mountain
hood,
jacket is
no insulation.
Yeah. And it's just like, and it has pockets in it, right? Just like for your hands. Yep. Yeah, I have one.
And a chest pocket.
You know what's funny about gear? So I wore Sitka stuff before me and you became friends too, John. But my issue is now is people ask me, they're like, "What pant is that?" And I'm like, "It's a Sitka pant. It's the stretchy one with the things on the pockets that John sent me. I don't know what it's called. I'm bad.
So bad. Let me give you a little insider baseball. So inside every garment now, I think this started 2 years ago, maybe, but inside every product we make, under all the little, they're not little, but all the hang tags. Anyways, under all that shit, there's a little narrow white tag with the name of the product printed on it.
So if you guys run into me,
because you are not the only one that said that.
So if some dudes that listen to this run into me on the Elkwoods and you ask what pants I'm wearing, I'm gonna whip them down, just so you know.
No, that's what I was going to say. Just somebody comes up and wants to know what they are. Just say, "Hey, dude, could you take your pants down? I would want to see what those are." But yeah, we got that. We heard that several years ago, and so yeah, every pant now has that in there. So if I'm talking to somebody and they have the product, I'm like, "Dude, what do you got?" And they're like, "I don't know, it's this or that." I'm like, "Look at the little white tag," and then they can tell me. And yeah. So Wace, what do you got? Sounds like Ty's kind of taken care of, but are you going to be like,
yeah, I'll be good.
Freezing your ass off? Are you listening to all this going, those sons of bitches?
Oh,
pretty
no,
much.
yeah,
he is. No, he is.
If I wasn't bringing the Blizzard suit, I'd run a nice, warm down jacket, down puffy. And then I would definitely be bringing puffy pants, 100%. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you, John. So for you, what's the boot you're grabbing for this? And then I also wanted you to touch on chest rigs and how fucking big do we need chest rigs to be? Like how much shit do we going to carry up front? For something like
so
this.
Let's talk boots first.
Stop making fun of my chest rig, Wasey. You son of a bitch. He's fucking guy. He's got this ongoing thing about how I look like not me, but he's always talking about people in their junk drawer on their chest. And I'm like, man, I just have two nice little clean pockets. But he's like, I just need binos. Like, you son of a bitch.
Because I know where what John's going to say. And like, no, just some of the people I see, they have a pistol in their chest rig and then bear spray and then rangefinder. And then they have a GPS and then they have a fucking hunting knife hanging off it. I'm just like, I just couldn't. I don't know if I could carry that much shit on my chest.
Yeah. Let's talk boots first, then we'll circle back to that.
Yeah.
So you guys probably aren't going to have these boots. So it's not like I'm saying if you don't have them, but you asked me what I would wear.
Yeah.
So I was actually supposed to go on a British Columbia hunt a couple years ago, late season hunt. And so I had thought about this, but anyways, I always try to run what's called a double boot in the winter. And so I talked about that in a video a couple weeks ago, but what the double boot is it's a lining, an insulated lining that comes out of the shell. So that's two parts. So that's where the double boot comes from. I always try to run a double boot for two reasons. One, a double boot is going to be warmer than a standard boot because you have this insulated liner. The other reason it's warmer over multiple days is because I take the liner out. I can leave the shell in the vestibule of the tent, and then I can either wear the liner to bed or put the liner, which is normally, not covered in snow or mud or whatever, inside my sleeping bag. So they're warm every morning that I put them on. So to me, like the versatility of a double boot is absolutely clutch. Like I'm going to do a video this afternoon, I talked about it a couple weeks ago, but somebody asked like to show the detail, but like, what do you do with your boots at night when it's that cold where you guys are going? And it's tough, right? Because it's tough to keep boots from freezing at night. So a double boot allows you to kind of get around that. So La Sportiva makes a very expensive boot called the Spantic, which is I believe it's a mountain in India, but the La Sportiva Spantic is a double boot, very warm, intended for these like cold environments. Another boot I've worn in the past is like a plastic mountaineering boot, double mountaineering boot, like a Koflak, or a Solo or Black Diamond used to make a double plastic boot. So again, plastic boot doesn't ever get wet, doesn't ever absorb moisture. And then I've got the liner that I can run. Most of the time now, what I do, I'm skiing if there's snow on the ground and my ski boots are double boots, right? So plastic shell, custom insulated liner. That's how I get around it. If I didn't have that, guys, I would be bringing probably, I mean, what I have in my arsenal right now, probably a 400 gram. Like I have a crispy Wild Rock 400 gram Gore-Tex boot that I think would work pretty well for me. Not ideal, not my first choice, but to more of a traditional boot, that's probably what I'd be looking at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So my feet sweat like a bastard, Barklow, like to the point where it's been on winter hunts. It's been a real issue for me where if I'm not managing moisture on my feet and or like wearing a heavy sock. So I normally run an uninsulated boot to kind of deal with that, from September to December. And then I basically just add insulation with my sock choice, right? So I'm sort of torn on this. Do I go with a heavy insulated boot, or do I run like my Zamberlin 2092 and then run a heavier sock inside for some insulation?
And just did you say something earlier about knee gaiters too, John? I can't remember.
Yeah. Gators that come up to your knee. Yeah.
Sitka doesn't,
just below your knee.
Does Sitka offer anything like that or no?
Yeah, it's called the Stormfront. It's called the Stormfront Gator.
Okay.
I think that's the Gator you have, Wasey. You just have super fucking long legs.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just below the knee, kind of covers your shin.
Oh yeah.
They're Gore-Tex. A lot of times when you're running crampons, you don't want to, because those crampons can snag your pants.
Mm-hmm.
So having that Gator does two things. One, it keeps the pant obviously really tight. So that's what the Gator does, is cover up the pant so snow's not going to get in or water. But it also takes the flapping part of the pant away, right? Because it's just got this tight Gator down there. And then if you do, or when you do snag the bottom, you're snagging the Gator and not ruining your pant. So yeah, you might ruin the Gator over time, but the Gator is going to be less expensive than the pant, right? So it like removes a trip hazard, and it waterproofs the bottom of your pant. And then if you have to replace it, it's less expensive. But you can, most of the time you can repair that shit with seam grip or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, man, boots are difficult. Hands and feet are just difficult in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I get this a lot where people say, man, my feet sweat. I'm going to give you just a couple ideas. So one, it's just tough. So anytime you have like a Gore-Tex liner, it's not going to breathe as well as if you don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you have a leather boot, it's not going to breathe as well as a synthetic boot. So yeah, if your feet sweat, a synthetic boot that doesn't have a waterproof liner is going to be a better option, because it's going to breathe better. And then if you get it with no insulation, it's going to breathe still even better. And then, like you said, you could modify insulation with a sock. The problem is depending on the boot, depending on your foot, like running a really thick sock in the winter and running a really thin sock in the summer, your fit's going to be different. And so maybe that causes some blister issues. I don't know. Everybody's going to be a little different. So you kind of have to figure that out. The other thing you can do is treat your feet every day with antiperspirant, just like you would your armpits. And so everybody's armpits sweat. Most everybody's armpits sweat. If you put antiperspirant, what does that do? It stops things from sweating for at least a period of time. And so you can do that, right? So you can treat your feet every morning, as an example, or every night with antiperspirant, and it won't stop, but it'll cut down on the sweating. And you'll have to do it you'll have to probably do it every day. So that's another option. The third option is, like I said, the double boot, because often the liners in those double boots, they don't absorb any moisture. And while they're warm and your foot's going to sweat, your foot is only going to sweat. Your foot can only sweat really so much. And once the atmosphere inside the boot is 100%, say, saturated, like it can't become 110% saturated. So the thing is, your foot's going to get, your foot's going to sweat. The liner's going to keep your foot wet, warm, even though it's wet. And then you're going to be able to dry that out every night. So that, to me, the double boot option in the winter is the better option of all that. And again, you could treat your feet with antiperspirant and still run a double boot. But, when your boots do get cold or frozen, hopefully not, but, in the morning, throwing chemical heat packs in there is going to help. Boiling a liter of water, pouring it into an Algene bottle, putting the boiling hot water, in the bottle, putting that hot bottle in each boot for 5 minutes, warm it up, pull the bottle out, shove your, warm foot in there with a dry sock, transfer the bottle to the next boot, do the same thing. That's going to help, right? Like, boots are just really tough to maintain in the winter over time when it's cold out.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe just touch on bino harnessing too quick. We don't want to keep you all morning here.
That's cool. So it sounds like there's some lover's quarrel going on here about the bino harness. I do think there's a fine line, right? So there's an idea in the military that we talk about carrying certain types of gear in certain places, either on your body or in your pack. And it's kind of like in order of priority, right? So we call it first line, second line, third line gear. So first line gear is, say, your clothes and what you'd have in the pockets of your clothes, right? So if everything were to be stripped off but your clothes, what do you got? And then second line gear is you're in this case, it would be your bino harness, right? Or whatever you're wearing on a chest rig. And then third line gear would be your pack. So the pack is something you're going to take on and off. The chest rig is something that you probably won't take off until you're in camp, but there is a chance of losing it. And then third line gear is first line gear is stuff that you just absolutely cannot do without, have to have it, lighter, compass, whatever. So that's kind of the way I approach these things. Obviously SICK has got that Mountain Optics harness. I built it with a couple things in mind. One, being able to run what I consider to be minimal gear in what I call second line, right? The other thing is what I wanted is versatility so that people could modify it from one season to the next, or one hunting style to the next, or one person to the next. So lots of different options out there in the market now, and lots of people have approached the same, we'll call it the same problem set, slightly different ways. yeah, for me personally, I think that there are people have gone way, way too far to the one end of the spectrum where they literally have like they're literally carrying third line gear in their chest rig. And I like to say what if weighs a lot, which means you can literally what if yourself into carrying 100 fucking pounds. And all you're doing is kicking your own ass, right? And then you can go to the other end of the spectrum where you're not going to carry anything on your body. And when you drop that pack and go on the stalk and you can't find that pack again, you're totally effed, right? So there's that fine line. And so for me personally, like what I carry in my chest rig is, if I'm hunting, right, is I obviously have binoculars. Because I'm a bow hunter, I'm always going to have my rangefinder, right? So rifle hunting, I still think it's probably relevant, but maybe not as much. So I've got my binoculars, I've got my rangefinder. Then in my left side, I've got some type of communication. So let's just call it an inReach in my phone, because those things are synced together. I can navigate, I can communicate with those two things. And then in the back, because there's a little zippered pocket, I have the bare minimum survival items. So I have a lighter, a flint and steel. I have a scalpel. I have a couple water purification tabs. And I have a little tiny signal panel, right? Or headlamp or something like that. Like that's it. I don't have food in there. I don't have, that's what I run for the most part. So if I never get back to my pack, I've got something to cut cord. I've got something to make a fire. I've got a way to communicate, and I've got a way to signal. Like to me, those are just the basics that I want to have if I'm out in the wilderness. And so, that's generally what I carry. If I'm going out in the winter, to be quite frank, like I live in grizzly bear country too, I'm not worried about bears, so I'm not bringing a pistol or bear spray. I would like to have at some point the ability to carry a pistol on my chest, because that's the way we used to do it in the military. But generally speaking, it just is kind of heavy and it gets in the way. And I'm trying to weigh the odds, right? Are the odds better that I'm going to run into a bear and have to utilize my pistol? Or, are my odds better that I'm going to be so clunky and heavy that I'm going to fuck up the stalk and not be able to kill the animal, right? So I'm probably not going to be able to kill the animal. I'm going to probably run the bear spray or the pistol on my pack. And if I do, for some reason, feel like I need to transfer it to go on a stalk, like I'll do it then. But, I've tried a bunch. I can't tell you I've tried everything on the market. I've tried the vast majority of things on the market for the last couple of years. When you have bear spray or pistols hanging under the bottom of the optics harness, it sounds like a good idea. I've tried it. As soon as you double over, pushes on your diaphragm or gut, you can't breathe and you want to throw up, right? So that doesn't work. You run it on one side, it's going to catch your bowstring. You run it on the other side, it's going to get in the way with, settling in to shoot from the prone position. So there's just never a perfect solution, and people have to just figure it out for themselves. But I think if you approach it, I know this is a long-winded answer, but I think if you approach it from a first, second, and third line gear. So what do I absolutely have to have? Like if I lost everything but my clothes, then second line gear. So probably going to be on my body at all times unless I'm in camp, right? So weapon, optics harness, and then third line gear is all the nice stuff. Tent, sleeping bag, stove. Like, yeah, I really want to have that, but I can survive without it. Just kind of build it out like that and then modify it per season.
Yeah. So like, I'm just like you, John, like we've seen the evolution of where this all started. Like you remember back in the day, we just had the bungee cords on the binos, right?
Yeah.
So we had the bungee cord binos, and then it kind of converged into like the S4 lockdown kind of style of harness. And then it came into the full containment harness. And then now I'm looking at some of these rigs these guys are coming out with, and I'm just like, where are we going with this? Like, how fucking big do we want how much shit do we want to carry on our chest? Like I'm just like pumping the brakes, and I see everybody pushing all this stuff. Like I seen was it Mystery Ranch, I think, Ty? Would they have like a fucking hand warmer and a bunch of shit underneath the bino harness, like a thing to put your hands in, I think it was.
Oh yeah, the hand muff. Yeah.
I don't know.
I agree. I agree with you. There's really two things here. There's, how the person, or I'll call it the consumer, is trying to approach the problem and solve it. And then how a brand is trying to, help that consumer with a product they can sell, right? That's going to take care of those issues. What I see, this is my personal opinion. Obviously, I'm involved in this at a professional level, but what I see is the same thing that happened over the course of 20 years with chest rigs for the military, right? And so they started out, and I've got 20, probably 30 years worth of chest rigs, and how they started out with just a couple things. Standard second line gear, and then slowly over time, right, advanced to where, guys are carrying 40 pounds on the front of their chest and got every goddamn bell and whistle that they could ever want at their disposal, to the point that it starts to cut down on mobility. And they've just taken it the wrong direction. Now, that's opinion, right? So that's my opinion. And I think it's good for all of us, not just with chest rigs, but everything, to occasionally sit back and go, okay, evaluate my stuff. I'm here. This is where I came from. Have I taken it too far? Right? Do I have too much stuff in my pack? Remember that I said, what if weighs a lot? Like, that's the what if scenario. It's like, dude, I need, I got to have a pistol. I got to have bear spray. I got to have a hand muff. I got to have a fucking, umbrella. I got to have all this stuff, right? And not just a pistol, but now I need a place for 2 extra mags. And then I got to, the inReach and the phone and the fucking knife. And before you know it, I mean, literally these guys are going into the mountains, and they're going to look like, a Marine getting ready to, storm Tora Bora, right? And it's like, and if that's what you want, that's totally fine. But I just think that everybody needs to assess and go, what problem are you trying to solve?
Did
what
you
is
guys
the
just
bare
become
bones
best friends?
Well, I think so. What is the bare bones minimum? What is the bare bones minimum based on experience and environment that you need, right? And leave everything else either at home or in your pack. It could be in the top lid of your pack, right? It could be in the top lid that turns into a fanny pack that you grab at the last minute and take on a stock. Like, however you sort that out, there's a bunch of ways. That's a whole nother podcast. But yeah, I just me personally, my personal opinion, like, I laugh. I just chuckle at some of the shit, right?
Yeah. And I want it.
But that's me. That's one guy's opinion.
That's why I asked John that question, because I wanted him to answer it, because I knew what he was going to say. Because the fucking
you wanted me to answer it to fuck Ty.
Well, I actually don't have the junk drawer going. That you should see some of the photos that Wasey sends me. They're hilarious. It's like it'll be like 100-pound soaking wet chick with 80 pounds of shit on her chest. You're like, well, what are you possibly doing with that?
Well, and honestly, not to go down a rabbit hole, but just to say, because I've thought about this a lot, obviously, with what I do for a living, but but a woman who's obviously got something more on her chest than most men, right? So she's got some type of boob. When they're somewhat large, and then they put that, and then all of a sudden this thing's sticking way out in front. Like, I'd love to see them try to low crawl, right? But listen, I'm not going to mention any names of products, but yeah, some of it's like every bell and whistle. And listen, there is absolutely a consumer who likes that, and that's totally cool. All I'm saying is, everybody needs to have a plan and think through it in a logical progression. And I like that first, second, third line approach that the military taught us, that most people hadn't even heard of or thought about. And it's like, what are the, what do I absolutely need, putting what if aside, and then just kind of build from there. And then the rest either stays at home or in your pack, because at a certain point it starts to go the other direction. And I think it starts to become a detriment, as opposed to, a positive. So, but everybody's got to answer that themselves.
Yep. 100%.
I mean, clearly you asked me my opinion. I've got one, but,
no, that's exactly right. It's just, some of it's just getting so carried away. And then Ty is like, so with the Sitka system, like you guys have, what's your harness called, Ty? What is that? Sitka makes it.
It's the mountain harness. Yep.
Yeah. So to me, awesome. When I look at that harness, it's clean, right? It's clean. It has the main harness for the binos, and then you have little pouch on either side, like super clean. You can shoot a bow. It's not going to hook on anything. To me, I think like that's almost the extent of what you should be running. Like, I don't know how some of these guys run what they run. I don't understand.
Again, I think everybody's, they got a different thought process to get where they are. If I look at the evolution of what I carried, like back in the day, it was H gear, and then it went to Rhodesian vest, and then it went to, basically like plate carriers with pockets that went on top of that. And, when I think back, it's like, God, man, like I carried so much shit, and this is just my personal journey, but, as I went and I got more comfortable with what I was doing and built skills and wasn't relying on, equipment, but, skills and knowledge, then my shit went from nothing because I was inexperienced. And this is just a standard progression for anybody, but, nothing because I didn't know, to way too much because I thought I knew everything, but I didn't have a lot of experience. And then you end up somewhere in the middle after some time on your feet, and some exposure. You kind of end up somewhere in the middle. So, I think that's what we see happening. I mean, bino harnesses just as a business are like a huge business, and, everybody's got a different interpretation. So the good thing is there's lots of options out there.
Yeah. You have anything else, Ty?
There you go.
To ask?
We've already kept Johnny an hour and a half here.
Yeah.
But
Can I say one more thing about that? I just gotta.
Yeah.
So
please.
When you look at a bino harness or a chest rig, and it's got like padding that looks like a backpack, like you could tell what the designer's intent is, right? So if you got padding that's like a backpack, you're like, well, fuck, man, that should probably be comfortable with 25 pounds. That tells you what the intent of the design was. When you look at the one I built, the Mountain Optics harness, like it's got 1 inch webbing and that's it. And that's two reasons. One, because I want it to be completely seamless underneath a backpack with no hot spots. And people sit there and they go, well, dude, fuck, that's not going to be comfortable. And I'm like, bro, if you're carrying fucking 20 pounds in there, you're already doing it wrong, in my opinion. And this isn't the product for you, right? The whole intent was a minimalist approach to carry just what you need and nothing more. So, and I would say that's almost like across the board for gear, and you just have to pick something that kind of suits your mentality for that particular trip.
Yeah, 100% agree.
I love it.
Yep.
Well, I think I asked all of my selfish questions. You and Wasey became best friends, John, and there you have it. Easy peasy.
So what are we gonna do, fellas, when you come back from your trip? I think I'm not like signing myself up here to your podcast, but like I would love to have a conversation, recorded or not, and hear about your lessons learned, hear how the trip went. I guarantee you're going to, learn a lot, and hopefully you guys are successful and stay safe, but I'm stoked. I mean, part of me wish wished I was going.
There's still
It's an
time.
adventure like no other in North America, dude. It's like, to me, it's like the pinnacle of mountain hunting to me is like a winter mountain goat hunt.
Yeah,
I'm stoked. Yeah, and absolutely, Johnny. We'll jump on here for sure. It'd be great.
yep.
Yeah, I'm so in. Yeah, no, I couldn't be more excited. And I know we touched on it at the beginning, but I try to post it in the story as much as I can. But on Instagram at John Barklow, I noticed that there's an knowledge from storms.
Yeah,
so
it's at J Barklow. Yeah,
there you go. And I noticed.
Yeah, somebody asked me about. Yeah, somebody asked me about that the other day, and I'm like, fuck. And then I realized I did that a while ago because people were like, dude, if you don't do it, somebody's going to grab it from you and bootleg your platform. So I built it, but then I forgot about it and I've never posted to it. Maybe I'll put a cat photo there.
That's a good call. That's
what I should do.
That's the thing to do for sure.
What did you say, John? I think this is what we should name this podcast, Ty. It was what ifs. What if weighs a lot? There you go, Ty. That's the name of this pod right there. What if weighs a lot?
What if weighs a lot? Yep.
There you go.
Perfect.
Okay, so folks can find you at J Barklow on Instagram, knowledgefromstorms.com. That's right, isn't it?
Yep, and same name for the YouTube channel. I got 7 or 8 videos on there right now.
Yeah, and I think it's the best gear content you can find on the internet. I take what you say as gospel. So as you can tell, my system has changed, and I have some quick shopping to do in the next week for a couple of months here. So
yeah, I hope your wife's not mad at me, but I appreciate it.
She would never make it an hour into one of these things before we got into me spending money, so we're good.
That's awesome.
She tolerates me the rest of the time. She doesn't need to listen to me or two, right?
Yeah, after that.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review. You can follow us on Instagram at Wilderness Locals. If you want to support the podcast, please check out the gear, articles, and whatever else we're up to on the website at www.wildernesslocals.net.